3, right? All right, well, you saw the first chapter, she found a guy that she thought was really the number one kind of catch, and she set about to do anything and everything possible to get him, which is always a mistake. And we saw a misbalance of emotion. The man was very regular, the king, or whatever you want to call it. I mean, he was very regular, if you will, in his speech toward her, building her up, complimenting her, telling her all of this stuff. And of course, she was very irregular in her responding. In fact, the first time she says, I'm kind of ugly, don't look at me, and then I'm this and that, and I've never been able to take care of my own vineyard. And then finally, after he continues his support of her and her building up and all that, finally she says, well, let's get this guy married and into the old house, into the old bed. And of course, because he's a prize, he's like 1 in a million, I can't let this guy go, so I'll do whatever I need to do. So she really pours it on. And of course, he responds by saying, no, this is not what we need right now. We've got to keep this thing balanced if we are to survive or to move into the future. Let me get to know you for you, not you for what you can do in the bedroom or on the couch, as they said in those days. Let's wait for a while and see what happens. So they wait a season. That was chapter 2. A season or a year goes by, and it starts to balance out a little more. I mean, he stays with him and she stays with her, and it's getting a little bit better here, and she's noticing it's been a year. Why don't we? And, let's get engaged, let's do all this stuff, and she's pretty good at it. And finally, again, oops, my line went the wrong way. Finally, again, she says, I gotta marry this guy. Even after a year. Now, see, she's justified because they've been dating for a year or engaged, whatever. And of course, he responds by, no, not now, honey. You're gonna ruin this thing. We're not ready yet. Let's wait until the marriage. You see? And he was very, I don't know what to say. He was very particular about this date. He's looking long range. She's looking immediate. Let's get this guy immediate. And well, whatever comes is whatever comes. Well, that's a horrible way to plan your life. Instead, he's trying to get her to see long range, to see what's more than just the immediate pleasures. Anyway, this is how it's been through chapters 1 and 2. Now we're up to 3, and of course, they've been engaged for a year, and they think, or whatever thinks, that they're ready perhaps to make this a little more permanent, a little more normal. And of course, that's where we are right now. She is still, you got to remember, in those days, I didn't fill my glasses. Oh, well, they'll do no good down there. These are still in the days where, you just didn't roll into the castle and say, hey, king, your girlfriend's outside. What do you want to do with her? You had to be invited into the kingdom. You had to be invited into the castle. So she sits at home a lot on her bed, writing his last name after her first name and dreaming a lot of that nonsense. And that's what's kind of going on, getting ready and waiting. And in these days, it was the king or the male that initiated the wedding proposals and things of that nature. It was not the woman. That was unheard of. So, everything depended upon the movement of the man. And his has been rather predictable, as you can see all the way. So basically, when he thinks it's right, it'll be right. Anyway, chapter 3 is that final time. Well, we kind of alluded to it last week. The final time where she says, man, I got to get this guy no matter what. And he's saying, whoa, slow down there, Nellie. And if you look at chapter 3, the first part of it is still the bride or the woman speaking. On my bed, night after night, I sought him, whom my soul loves, but I did not find him. Of course, he's in the castle. I must arise now and go about the city, in the streets and in the squares. I must seek him whom my soul loves. I sought him, but I did not find him. The watchmen who make the rounds of the city found me, and I asked them, have you seen him whom my soul loves? Scarcely had I left him when I found him whom my soul loves, and I held on to him and would not let him go. She wrapped herself around him like a cheap suit. Until I brought him into my own mother's house and into the room of her who conceived me. And then, of course, you see the groom say, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, by the gazelles and the hinds of the field, that you not arouse my love or awaken my love until it pleases. So in other words, he said no. That's where we ended last week. Okay? Just because the season's passed, now she thinks, let's do this thing. And he's saying, no, not yet. Not yet. All right? Now we go towards the friends. They're going to chime in, and we're going to see something very interesting happening. Behold, what is this coming up from the wilderness, as if columns of smoke, perfumed with myrrh and frankincense, with all the scented powders of the merchant? Behold, it is the traveling couch of Solomon, with his mighty men around it. Of all the mighty men of Israel, all of them are experts of wielders of the swords, experts in war. Each man has his sword at his side, guarding against all terrors of the night. King Solomon has made for himself a sedan chair from the very timbers of Lebanon. He has made its posts of silver and its backs of gold, and its seat of purple fabric, with its interior lovingly fitted out by the daughters of Jerusalem. Go forth, O daughters of Zion, and gaze upon the king with the crown, with which his mother has crowned him on the day of his wedding and on the day of his gladdened heart. What do you see happening here? It's the wedding feast. It's the wedding party. What they
sound like they're gossiping.
Huh?
They sound like they're gossiping.
Oh, no.
They're talking about
The friends, you got to remember, in Hebraic poetry, the friends act very much like Shakespearean poetry. In fact, Shakespeare probably copied his methods from the Bible. The friends set the scene, you know. They set the scene. They're the background. If you were to say, look, he's tied to the railroad tracks and a train is coming through the tunnel. That's something the friends would say, to set the scene, and then it would go back to the actor on the tracks going, help me. You see, so that's what's happening here. The friends are setting their scene. They're saying, what is this coming up over the mountains? Well, it's the wedding procession. It's the king would come out in his sedan and get the bride, and then they would taxi off down to the temple, and the priests would marry them, you see. So he's saying, what is this? It's a sedan chair, you know, and a bunch of guys carrying it, you know. And that's how it was. And they were all swordsmen, you know, guarded by swords, and men all over the place guarded by swords. That was the king. So the king's chair is coming. And he's coming out now. He's made the decision, not the girl. He's made the decision to come out and find the girl and take her. Of course, they'd return to the city, back to Jerusalem. And of course, they would go to the temple where the priests would be waiting to do the marriage ceremony. But up until this time, the key thing is that he's got to get this woman in balance with him. And he's twice had to refuse her advances for physical contact because he wanted time, he wanted the season to pass, he wanted to get to know and to love her for who she is, not just the physical sense. And this is what's happening. But there comes a time where the king says, I love this woman, I want to marry her, and he makes that decision and gathers together his soldiers in the sedan, and they bring it out. It's a big deal. And people would, I'm sure, whoever saw it would line the streets and wave and shout because the king was getting married, and yay for them. Okay? So it was a big deal. It was properly done at his time, not by her influence of any means. In fact, he's the one that refused it every time she tried to get ahead of the game. She said, we've got to balance this thing. We've got to keep it balanced. So, that's chapter 3. Now, if we move on to 4, and we will, we move in. Chapter 4 is really the wedding night, if you will. How beautiful you are. This is the groom speaking, of course. How beautiful you are, my darling. How beautiful you are. Your eyes are like doves behind your veil. That's, of course, the wedding veil. She is a married lady now. Your hair is like, and I don't know what woman in the world would not want to hear this. Your hair is like a flock of goats. I was saying that to Carol just this morning. Yeah, I can't go home now, by the way. Your hair is like a flock of goats that have descended from Mount Gilead. Your teeth are like a flock of newly shorn ewes, little baby sheep, which have just come up from their washing, all of which bear twins. Oh, so you got all her teeth. That's a moneymaker right there. And not one amongst them have lost their youngs. Your lips are as scarlet threads. Your mouth is lovely. Your temples like a slice of pomegranate behind your veil. This woman's just a big old fruit salad. Your neck is like the Tower of David, built with rows of mighty stones, on which are hung 1,000 shields, all around shields of the mighty men. That's her neck. She just like a fortress neck. Your breasts are like 2 fawns, twins of a gazelle, which feed amongst the lilies. Under the cool of the day, when the shadows flee away, I will go my way to the mountain of myrrh and to the hill of frankincense. We're not even going to go there. You are altogether beautiful, my darling, and there is no blemish in you. Wow, she's a prize. Come with me from Lebanon, my bride. May you come with me from Lebanon, journey down from the summit of Armana, from the summit of Sinir and Irmon, from the dens of the lions, from the mountains of leopards. You have made my heart beat faster, my sister, my bride. You have made my heart beat faster with a single glance of your eyes, with a single strand of your necklace. How beautiful is your love, my sister, my bride. How much better is your love than fine wine and the fragrance of your oils, that all kinds of spices. Your lips, my bride, drip honey. Honey and milk are under your tongue, and the fragrance of your garments is like the fragrance of Lebanon. A garden locked is my sister, my bride, a rock garden locked and a spring sealed up. Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates with choice fruits, henna and nard plants, nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon, with all the trees of frankincense, myrrh and aloes, along with the finest spices. You are a garden spring, a wellspring of fresh water, and streams flowing from Lebanon. Whoa. Say that to your wife, guys. He is definitely... Say that again.
Why does he keep mentioning something Lebanon, like she's from Lebanon?
Because that was the choicest, best land in that day and age. The cedars of Lebanon, yeah. Well, no, it was just a reference to her, like, I could say, Cucaracha.
With the country.
I could say, oh, Cucaracha, my bride, you are as beautiful as an old rusted Pinto out in a field of dirt. Or I could say, ah, Cucaracha, you are so lovely, you are like a Maserati, flying through the mountains of Napoli. You see, that's what he's doing. He's just praising her with all the wonderful things that he knows.
Okay.
As opposed to, you're an old beat up Pinto, an old rusted Chevy out in the field. So that's what he's doing.
She wasn't a redneck.
Huh?
She wasn't a redneck.
You know, if you're a redneck, that would change it a little. It'd be like, oh, my darling, you are like an AR-15 with a 300 magazine. You are like a jug of the finest wine spirits. You're like my old hound dog. I like it. Everybody's got their images, so. But no, they're not going anywhere. He's just referencing beautiful places. And chapter 5, of course, is his final ending. He says, I have now come into my garden, my sister, my bride. I have gathered my myrrh along with the balsam. I have eaten of my honeycomb and my honey. I have drank my wine and my milk. Then the friends chime in, eat, good friends, drink and imbibe deeply, O lovers. They're in agreement with this. They're all saying, it's about time. So on the wedding night, this is what's happening. If you remember, the first 15 verses is the groom's expression, and it's very much all him. But you will see her chime in later. That's just next week. But it is starting to balance out. He is giving her a playing field, if you will. He's chiming in very strongly about, wow, you are the greatest thing since sliced bread and all this. Your hair, you notice he starts at the top of her body and goes all the way down, with mentioning everything. So there's, and at the bottom, when he gets to her feet, he finally says, in you there is no blemish. There's no bad spot. There's nothing that needs fixing here. You're everything a guy could want and then some. So you see beauty, the beauty in physical form. You see the excitement in the language of anticipation. You know, it's kind of like waiting for those. Remember those old Heinz commercials? And they used Carly Simon's song, Anticipation. And the kid's sitting there waiting for the ketchup to come out of the bottle, and he's got a pile of fries there. And they used, you remember that? You have to be old because it was back in the 60s. Anticipation. Or 70s. Anyway, this is what's going on. There's beauty in the physical form. There's beauty in the excitement or the waiting, the building up to this. It's not just jump, put on your helmet and hit the beaches. It's not just a jump in bed and get it over with. And there's beauty in the fact that she's a virgin. I don't know if I spell that right. Virgin? V-I-R-G-I-N?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. There's no E in there, right? She's a garden lot. She is a woman who's kept herself pure to this moment. So she is 110% his and only his. So there's beauty in physical beauty, H-Y-S. There's anticipation, and then there is purity. He's got a lot to compliment her on. Now, some of this would not have been had he jumped on the couch with her all those other times that she presented herself, remember? This is what I'm saying. He was smart enough to be looking long range down the street for a relationship of two people coming to know each other, to love each other, to learn to balance together where they are acting and responding the same, helping to complete one another rather than taking advantage of one another. So when they do get to the wedding night, and that's what this is, there's a lot to celebrate than just what she can do in the bedroom. There's a lot to celebrate here. And it's the beauty of her. It's the beauty of the relationship, how it's grown. It's now that everything can be truly appreciated. And then the friends, of course, all chime in and say, wow, I wish this were me, so to speak. And they're saying, drink, imbibe deeply, enjoy yourself. Celebrate the love that you have created together. And it's full, it's full appreciation here. On both parts. Now, I realize it's the groom speaking at this time, but he's been the one holding things back, waiting until the time is perfect, and now the time is perfect. They are wed, they are blessed of God. He has brought her into his castle, and he acknowledges not his might or his kingship, or boy, I'm the biggest guy, I got the strongest muscles. No, it's nothing about him at all. It's all about her. And by waiting and holding and resisting the couch experiences before, she's come to be the truly lovely woman in whom no blemish is found. Pretty cool. A garden locked, a place preserved only for him. And there's a beauty here that women don't understand. There's a beauty, a strength in beauty here that little girls give up too quickly in high school or in middle school even. They're throwing themselves away and denying themselves according to the scriptures. I mean, if you believe that God stuff, that it can really be so much more healthy, holy, and sacred when the time is right. When the relationship has matured, not because of what you can do in the bedroom, but because of who you are as a person, who I am as a person. Let's get to know one another and learn about one another, everything that we can. This is always an option. It's always an option. It's not going away. As long as you're you and I'm me, this is always an option. We don't need to jump into the back of the Chevy now. Let's wait until we really learn of each other and one another. Hold up, coffee break. I never did get that coffee. Al, that's my cup of coffee. Leave it alone. Yep. No. I saw you starting to mooch on my coffee cup. Oh, Al was trying to get it. I wait for 3 weeks and some guy walks off. Just ain't right.
Wawa
What a prize.
has stevia now.
Huh?
Wawa has stevia.
Okay.
For those who like stevia.
Stop talking to her.
Wawa has.
Because you're making less sense than she does. I don't know what a stevia is.
Sweetener for coffee.
Okay, good.
You gotta go to Wawa to understand.
So this must have been wife number one.
Huh?
I mean, listen, if this was King Solomon,
Well,
it must have been wife number one, because how...
they're attributing it to the king because he wrote it. But you got to remember, it's considered the wisdom literature or God's mind. This is how God wants it for every man, for every woman. So you got to look at it that way. Now, yes, he's the object. He's the medium by which this thing is moving along. So is she, although she remains unnamed.
I guess he got the other practice he had, he knew how to write it right.
Say that again, slower.
I think he had other practice, so he must have.
Okay, he may have had a little practice. I don't know. Stop overthinking it. It's God's blueprint for our benefit. Put it that way. That's why we call it the wisdom literature.
It's not God that makes the Lord, it's us.
Well, and everybody says God gives us plans and exact details and operational, functional instructions on everything on the planet except the male and the female, which he created and intended for relationship, to become one in his eyes. Well, why didn't he give us plans there? Why are so many relationships running amok? Well, he did give us plans. It's right here in the Song of Solomon. It's just that we never read it that way, you see. It is. It's a detailed blueprint, if you will, a schematic of how he would wish his men and women would live their lives in terms of relationship. That's all we're talking about here. Relationship between a man and a woman, okay? We're not talking about anything particularly spiritual other than this is God's preference of a relationship. To get it balanced, to get it on the same page, to learn to appreciate, to love one another, and to mature in one another long before the sex thing happens. Get to know each other for who each other is, not who I'm going to make him later. Oh, I'll change him. No, you're not. If you're going to balance or do any of that, it's going to happen now, not 20 years down the road when you're married to him. And women always do that. They marry a guy because they think he's tough and he's a little bit of a gangster, thinking, well, I'll change him. I'll make him a nice dad. He never becomes a nice dad. He goes out with his friends. He stays a gangster. He doesn't care about the kids. And then the wife ends up getting divorced, going, well, I don't understand. You made a stupid decision years ago. You see, and that's what God's trying to prevent is learn. Always learning. But most important, your key is balance. And again, I will say this, I'll say it, and I know people hate me for saying it, but it's not about equal rights. You will never have equal rights between a male and a female because there's no such thing. Better said, it's about completing rights. You do some things I don't do. I do some things you don't do. Together we'll blend them. And together we'll become one in the sight of God. Two halves, two fragments becoming a whole in the sight of God under his rule, his direction, and his plan. Not our own. So when you start screaming about equal rights, I want 50-50, oh, our marriage is 50-50. Well, you're focusing on yourself, really, is what you're doing. You're not focusing on your partner at all. It's not equal rights. It's never about equal rights in a relationship. It's about completing rights. How can I complete you as a woman? How can you as a woman complete me as a man in this relationship to whereby we're both vital, we're both important, and we're both pleasing God? That's what you want to do. That's what you want to go to bed at night with. That's what you want to wake up in the morning with. Do you want to make that man breakfast? Well, he called me a bad name last night. I'm not going to make him breakfast. Well, really? You're going to destroy a beautiful relationship just because you got a little aggravated? He said you had a buffalo butt or something last night, and now you're not going to make him breakfast and treat him mean all day? What if this was your last day on life on the earth and you treated him mean all day? You know, and he woke up dead. Then you go, well, gee, I wish I hadn't treated him so mean. And live your life in regret because of what? You broke God's plan. You broke God's law. Made both male and female, and a man shall go forth from his home, and a woman shall leave her mother and her father and go forth and search and seek out and find the man. And the two shall cleave each there unto one another and become one in my sight, and I shall bless them all the days of their lives. That was God's plan. That was God's intent from Genesis. But see, along the line, somewhere we said, well, I'm doing more work than you. Well, I have to mow the yard. Well, I have to wash the car. Well, I have to do the wash. Oh, I got to raise the kids. Well, I got to... Stop it. Stop it. You see a job? Do it. Doesn't matter who does it. Just that it gets done. And the body, the family, the whole is the better part because it's done. And you don't need any praise for it. You don't need any medals or trophies. Just do it. Why? Because, I hate to be cliche, you're in this together. The life you may save, the relationship you may save, the joy you may save may be your own. You're not going to affect anybody else. So why would you do things in your relationship to purposely sour or hurt that relationship? Oh, wait a minute, Tom, you're talking about common sense. We ain't got any of that. Of course you don't. That's why the world has a 65% divorce rate. Even amongst Christians. No different. In fact, the pagans, they're doing a little better than us, actually. They're about 60%. We're about 63%. And yet nobody, if you ask anybody, have you ever read the Song of Solomon? Why not? Especially if you're getting into a relationship. Especially if you're getting married. Now, if you look at the last two verses, he's a garden like a well unfresh, all this streams flowing in Lebanon, blah, 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 blah. He is perfect, everything is wonderful. What's basically happening here is, and going to happen, is now he, for the first time, I'm going to save it till next week, but he, for the first time, is starting to sound like what? Well, kind of like she did before. Let's build this house together. Let's build this life together. Let's make our walls strong, our rafters impenetrable. Let's get our couch luxuriant. Let's keep it sacred. Preserve it. Let's keep it sacred. It's a holy place for you and me and God as we truly become, in a physical sense, one in His sight. Let's hang on to that. Let's go back and remember the night the garden was unlocked. And the joy was felt and shared and spread eternally in that night. Okay? Everything can be sacred. Everything can remain sacred. But that's up to you. That's up to you. And that's what you want to do. But for the first time, see, she's been saying this all along. I got to marry this guy. I got to do whatever's possible to get this guy. And he was the one saying, no, 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 you're focused all wrong. But now he's to the point where he's saying, this woman is a prize. And I love her and I want her to love me. Well, you'll see in the next chapter her response to all of this. And it's going to be amazingly equal. Amazingly balanced. Amazingly. All right, that's today. Next week, we'll start finishing it up. And you're going to see when problems arise in the marriage. Always a headache. Will they come? Sure, they'll come. Why? Because our world is a wicked place. And if it doesn't come from within, it will come from without. Friends, influences, mother-in-laws. Anyway, there's always a headache because nobody wants to look upon the perfect couple having a perfect marriage and a perfect life and everything's going well and God's blessing them and it's not happening for them. And it's not happening for them because they didn't make it happen. All right? So you're always going to have enemies, antagonists, or just flat out headaches, heartaches. You go to work one day and a plane crashes into the building and your perfect husband is dead. Now, whose fault is that? Well, not yours, not his. But heartaches happen regardless. All right? We'll talk about that next week.